Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu ala nabil ummi. Today, alhamdulillah, we have a very interesting topic, and I am hoping that we can learn a lot from it. And the purpose of bringing this topic up is so that we can better our lives and we can bring more happiness, more fulfillment, and more cohesion into our lives. The point is not to bicker and argue between the genders. Although as humans we tend to love to argue, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Quran, وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. A human by nature is very prone to argue about everything. أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ, mostly he would love to argue. So may Allah save us from bickering or arguing and actually learn something. Anyway, so the topic is men are not prophets and women are not angels. You see how my volume went down with the second sentence? Yeah, so basically what ends up happening is as men we are so scared to talk about issues with regards to women, because what's happening in our society right now is anybody who brings up objections or good points, then he's basically thrown under the bus because he's going against the grain. But if going against the grain is for a good reason, then I think that should be welcomed. So the topic was men are not prophets and women are not angels. So, religiously speaking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a very special role to men. The Quran tells us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الرجال قوامون على النساء. Men have a certain rank over women. So, the hadith mentions they have to overlook for his flock and look out for their well-being. So, what this causes sometimes is it gives a person this wrong sense of infallibility, where the man thinks that he cannot make any mistakes now because he's picked by God to fulfill a certain role. So now he cannot make a mistake. So this chosenness comes in, and a person starts to justify his actions in the light of religious texts. So if the man makes a mistake, he tries to justify it through a hadith and so on. And this is where lines start to blur in the actions and the behavior of the man. And as humans, we are very smart in making our arguments. So a person can basically wiggle out of any situation by using good logic, a good argument, use a hadith and an ayat, and wiggle out of any sticky situation. This engenders into a person into self-deception. A person starts thinking, actually, I have not made many mistakes in my relationships, whether it be with parents, whether more specifically with a wife. A person starts thinking like, I didn't make any mistakes. So this perfection becomes a really big problem, although the person is hiding his faults and his flaws, but he has this sense of, I cannot do any wrong. So that is the men's part. Now we get to the second part, and that is also in religion. Religion has taught us to show a great deal of kindness towards women, whether they be our mothers, wives, sisters, or daughters, where we are told to be humble, to be kind, to be gracious. And when you look at it biologically speaking, women don't cope too well with stress. And number two, they're physically weaker. So because of those two reasons, even logic will tell you to be gracious, to be kind. Now, what is the outcome of all this? Socially speaking, we have this idea, this imposed understanding that you cannot look at the faults of a woman. You cannot correct a woman. And let me give you a very interesting example. So let's just say there's a scenario where a man is losing his cool in a public setting and he's venting at his wife. Everybody will think like, yo, this guy's crazy. Why is he so angry? But if we switch the roles and a woman is losing her cool and she's going crazy and her man will just pretend we didn't see it and we'll just carry on walking and be surprised at how angry she is and so on. And somebody might remark, well, somebody's sleeping on the sofa tonight. So, as if to say that a woman can lose her cool. So that is where, socially speaking, we give a pass to women. And as I said in the beginning, giving some passes is completely fine. But this is where this becomes a problem, is where there's no accountability and responsibility in the behavior and actions of a woman. And we end up with some unspoken rules, which will be you don't correct a woman, you don't argue with a woman about anything logical, never, sorry, dry throat, never offend a woman by telling her anything that she doesn't want to hear. So this leads to a very power imbalance situation. So let's go back to the basics, where if a society is patriarchal, where men have more say, or if a society is matriarchal, where women have more say, more control. In both those situations, if that power that they have is not bridled, there's no control on it, they're both going to abuse their powers. So when we look at some of our Eastern cultures, most of them are patriarchal in a way. Men have more dominance, more control, so they get away with a lot of crimes. I'm just going to call them crimes. And now we see in the West, it's a complete opposite of that, where women get away with murder. Literally, if you look at the law, if a man commits a murder, a woman commits a murder, they'll say studies have shown women get much less years behind bars compared to a man. So this is where we need to try to see why these things are happening. And remember, power spoils people. And that's why, if you were ever listening to the verses of the nikah, the man is being basically beaten with 3 ayats. All 3 having the same message: fear Allah, fear Allah, fear Allah. As if on this special occasion the guy is getting married, he's basically being told you're a criminal if you use your powers in the wrong way. In a Muslim society, it's a patriarchal society, so make sure you don't abuse your powers, and you could be a sinner prospectively if you do not control your powers that you've been given. So we see that religion places a great amount of emphasis on power that's given. So we need to think about that a lot and to see how we can take all the control that Allah gives us, whether we live in the East or the West, and have a sense of balance, have a sense of human decency, and try to understand that we could make mistakes regardless of our image in our own eyes, and we think, no, I'm perfection, I never made a mistake. And let's get over that. Whether we be a person listening, whether it be a man or a woman, we need to get over that. I remember counseling many times. A woman would mention the faults of the husband, and I can see what's happening. So I'm like, okay, these are clear problems. But then when it comes to the woman, she might say something like, oh, I don't have an ego and I haven't made any mistakes in our relationship. And as soon as I hear that, I'm just shocked at why is this sense of angelicness that, oh, I never made a mistake. And it makes it harder to mention any advice afterwards in a marriage counseling, because a woman basically has made a standard like, I don't make mistakes, lecture this guy. So it takes quite a bit of strategicness to get around that barrier that she built. So we go around that and we mention that, yeah, you could have made a mistake in previous situations, and slowly they drop that defensive mode and they start listening. So that is why it's really important that we get rid of these notions of men, every man acting like he's a prophet, or a woman walking around living her life as if she's an angel. We all have egos, we all have biases, we have personal blind spots where we don't see the wrong of our actions. So may Allah give us tawfiq to think deeply about our behaviors in life, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give our marriages and all of our relationships with our families a lot of love, unity, understanding and harmony. And may Allah save us from the evil of ourselves. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu